Impeached again. Donald Trump is looking down the barrel of yet another impeachment trial. This one more damning than the last, after 10 Republicans voted with the Democrats, making it the most bipartisan impeachment we've seen so far, Judy.
That's right, Adam. The U.S. House of Representatives voted 232 in favor and 197 against to indict President Trump for incitement of insurrection of last week's riots at the U.S. Capitol in a bid to overturn the November 3rd election result. Well, the impeachment makes Mr. Trump the first sitting president in U.S. history to ever be impeached twice by the House. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signed the article of impeachment shortly after the historic move formalizing the vote result. It is unknown when exactly she will send the article to the Senate for trial.
Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the trial won't happen before the president leaves office, adding there's no chance of a fair trial if it is rushed. Now, Mr. McConnell, though, did not rule out voting against Mr. Trump, but said that he will make his final decision known at the trial.
In a recorded speech released shortly after the impeachment, President Trump made no mention of the indictment. Instead, he reiterated his earlier comments, condemning the violence and urged a peaceful transition of power next week.
There is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Now I am asking everyone who has ever believed in our agenda to be thinking of ways to ease tensions, calm tempers, and help to promote peace in our country.
Well, for the latest, Simon Marx joins us from Washington, D.C. And Simon, no reaction from the president at all on the impeachment, but a call to his supporters to stop the violence. It sounds like to me that he's trying to walk back what he was encouraging, on January the 6th and buy some political goodwill ahead of that Senate trial.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Adam. He's been under enormous pressure from furious Republicans on Capitol Hill who were particularly enraged by the president's behavior on Tuesday. Remember, he was in front of the television cameras 3 times on Tuesday when he left the White House, when he arrived at Andrews Air Force Base, and then in Texas. And on no occasion did he do what Republican leaders were demanding, and that is look into the camera lens and order his violent supporters. The FBI says they are planning attacks in all 50 American states and right here in Washington to desist and to stand down. So he finally voiced those sentiments tonight, fully a week after the onslaught against lawmakers on Capitol Hill, the attempt to find Mike Pence to execute him, the threat by at least one of the arrested insurrectionists to shoot Nancy Pelosi in the head on live television. Tonight, 7 days on, he's finally saying that they're not true supporters of his and he wants them to avoid any further acts of violence. And he's doing that at a time when Republicans in the Senate now are all being polled by the media and are being asked when Donald Trump's impeachment trial begins. We know it's not going to happen this side of Wednesday's inauguration, but when it begins, are they going to vote to convict him? A move that would lead to him being unable to run for elected office in this country again. So there are all sorts of possible interpretations that you can put on that video message. The one thing that is incontrovertible is that the tone that he struck in that video was 180-degree reversed from the emboldened scoffing in Texas at attempts to constrain his powers and the insistence there that the moves against him were absolutely ridiculous and part of the greatest witch hunt in American history. Tonight, at least, a very different President Trump on display.
Indeed, Simon. And Facebook has warned of increased violent rhetoric linked to the inauguration next week of President-elect Joe Biden, and echoing a warning by the FBI of armed protests planned in the Capitol and other cities around the U.S. How real is the threat of violence?
All you have to do is to look at the state of Washington, D.C. tonight. Joe Biden will be taking the oath of office on Wednesday behind a literal circle of steel, a non-scalable 7-foot fence erected around the U.S. Capitol, concrete blast barriers put in place. 20,000 National Guard will be on the streets of Washington for Inauguration Week. That's 4 times the number of U.S. troops currently deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. So the law enforcement agencies here and the intelligence communities, who may well be late to understanding the scale of the threat that is posed by some of these violent insurgents, certainly are defending this city as though it was about to come under imminent attack. And we saw Department of Justice officials warning in their briefing here on Tuesday that it will take them years to hunt down and neutralize every single threat coming from these conspiracy theorist supporters of President Trump who launched that invasion of the Capitol building a week ago. There is just an abiding sense here of a new, very dark chapter beginning in the United States because of the sheer numbers of people out there who believe that the American election was rigged and fixed, and the access that so many of them have to really serious weaponry.
Yeah, it's seriously worrying there. Simon, thanks very much for that. Simon Marx from Washington, D.C.
So with the House impeaching President Trump for the second time, the obvious question is, what's next? Well, it will move to the upper chamber or the Senate, where a trial will be held. Senators will decide whether to convict or acquit Mr. Trump under the supervision of the Supreme Court Chief Justice. 2/3 of the 100 lawmakers in the Senate must vote to convict Mr. Trump. And as we've been telling you, the trial won't take place till after the first 100 days of the Biden presidency to allow the Senate to focus on the new administration's policy priorities. Now, when the Senate trial does happen, lawmakers could also vote to ban Mr. Trump from running for any public office, including another shot at the White House. Indictment by both the House and Senate is not without consequences. Mr. Trump stands to lose millions in benefits, including his security detail, travel expenses, and pension. Now, we also spoke with Richard Mullany, the director of Public Policy Institute at Jacksonville University, and he underlined just how historic the second impeachment vote is against Donald Trump.
Of course, historic. It's the first time in the history of the country that a president has been impeached twice. And typically, as you mentioned, along partisan lines. Liz Cheney, the third-ranking Republican in the House yesterday, indicated she would vote for impeachment. So it wasn't anticipated that you would have more Republican votes. This is in sharp contrast to a year ago, in which 0 Republicans voted for impeachment. This time, you had 10 Republicans voting for impeachment. But again, with 222 Democrats all in favor and then 10 Republicans. Very much unprecedented here in the United States. The U.S. Senate is currently in recess. They won't return to work until next Tuesday, the 19th, which is the day before Joe Biden is sworn in as president. So any trial will take place after Donald Trump is out of office. In the Senate, there will be a trial. It's a 2/3 vote. There you have a split of 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats. It's going to require on 2/3 17 Republican votes. Pretty unlikely to get 17 at this point. That could change, but that appears unlikely. Last year, there was 1 Republican to vote for impeachment, but there is a difference this year. The president's conduct is widely recognized by many as potentially very much a compelling case as an impeachable offense. There are other arguments that some Republicans are making, that this is divisive for the country, that he's already out of office, that it's not in the best interest of the country. And so therefore, many Republicans will be listening, but there's already been an indication from a number of U.S. senators, including Murkowski in Alaska, Ben Sasse in Nebraska, Toomey in Pennsylvania, and others. So you can expect that more Republicans will likely be voting to convict this time, but it's going to be very difficult to get to that 2/3 margin.